All right. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, listen. So Michael's going to be telling us today about, and this is what's really important for those of you that don't know who I'm talking to today. Michael Schussler is one of the leading fantasy experts in America today. He works for us over at whatsonsports.com, and he's going to tell us today. A lot of you are in fantasy football leagues, and this is playoff time now for those of you in fantasy football leagues. And some of you are dealing with injuries. Some of you are dealing with underperforming players. But Michael is here to help us out and tell us who the top 5 fantasy waiver picks should be.
That's right.
Michael, I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah, oh no, you should be. I mean, this is big stuff. I mean, this is a week 13's over, so the regular season's done. We are moving on to the fantasy playoffs. All right, like I've said many times on this show, any respectable fantasy league ends on week 13 and the playoffs start on week 14. So it's 14, 15, 16. There's no week 17 in any real fantasy league. All right. So
a lot of teams protect their players,
yep.
So you don't get to play your best players. So anybody
they just don't have anything to play for.
Right.
So you shouldn't, especially the fantasy championship, the most important week, it should not be based around, a team like maybe the Steelers or the Chiefs who have already clinched a certain seed and they don't need to be playing anyone. All right. So top waiver claims this week. Now you can find plenty of great articles on What's on Sports, one that goes more into detail about my favorite pickups and also my DFS plays for this coming week, player rankings, everything that you would need is going to be on there. But I did say, John, that I would give you 5 of my top waiver pickups for this week. Now, all of these players are going to be rostered in less than 50% of leagues. Okay. So they're going to be available to most of you out there. So listen up here. Number 5. All right. Tim Patrick for the Denver Broncos. Now, not ever played without a quarterback. Okay. We're not going to count that, but Tim Patrick has had double-digit fantasy points in 7 out of his last 8 games. All right, he has 7 touchdowns on the year, which is a career high for him. And Drew Lock has been really looking his way quite often in the red zone, which resulted in 2 touchdowns last week against Kansas City. He has a relatively favorable matchups, to finish the year with the Carolina Panthers this week, Buffalo Bills next week, and the Los Angeles Chargers in week 16. He's rostered in under 25% of leagues. He could be a league winner with that attention from Drew Lock, who we know is trying to sling it. So that's my number 5.
I find it amazing that he's still available in 50% of the leagues.
Oh, he's available in 75%, John.
Wow, that's amazing to me.
Yeah,
that's amazing to me. That kid's really had a breakout year.
He has. I think, maybe it's a lot of him being on the Broncos, which isn't sexy. And he does have to compete with, Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant a little bit with targets. But like I said, in the red zone, Drew Lock is always looking at Tim Patrick, and we've seen that come to fruition here. All right, so that's my number 5. Number 4.
Who's number 4 on the list?
Number 4, we're going to stick with.
Now, Michael, just really quick here. Is this in a particular order?
Yeah.
So number 5 is the
number 5 is my least prioritized. Number 1 will be my most must-add player. Okay.
Okay. So awesome. Well, let's hear about number 4.
All right. Number 4 is Kiki Cutie of the Houston Texans. Now he's rostered again, only 23% of leagues. So he's out there in 77% of leagues. He's on waivers right now, which will clear tonight. All right. Now he's only played in 4 games this year, but he was finally unleashed last week, and he put up career numbers with 8 catches on 9 targets for 141 yards. Yep. Now we know Deshaun Watson is going to throw the ball. That's what he wants to do. They don't really have a great running game, even with David Johnson. But Watson had 340 yards last week. He's had over 300 yards in 8 games. All right, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, Randall Cobb, they're all out. Kiki Cutie is going to continue to see looks. He's now the number 2 receiver behind Brandon Cooks, and last week he was utilized even more. So I love Kiki Cutie going forward. He's just going to get a lot of looks from Deshaun Watson, which is always good for your fantasy team. 75% of leagues he's out there.
Wow. All right, who's number 3 on the list?
Number 3 will be my last wide receiver in this group, or in this topic, is T.Y. Hilton, who is surprisingly available in over 50% of leagues. I think he's rostered in 45%. And this is a guy who was probably drafted, in the 5th, 6th, 7th round in most fantasy drafts this year, but he had been pretty disappointing. I mean, so disappointing throughout the beginning of the year that he's most likely been dropped, and that's why he's available in all these leagues. But Ty saw his season high, in targets, catches, and yards last week against the Houston Texans. And like I said, it's taken all year, but we're finally seeing some of that big playability that he'd been known for in the past, particularly with Andrew Luck. He's got touchdowns in back-to-back weeks, and he's been getting good separation from coverage, which is something he hadn't been doing coming into last week or 2 weeks ago. He seems to finally be on the same page with Phillip Rivers, and his production really should only go up from here. He has great matchups to finish the year. He's got Las Vegas Raiders this week, and again, he's got Houston next week. So he goes back to Houston, which he has had career numbers with. All of his breakout games are against the Houston Texans. They're in the same division. He just really seems to play well against them, and you will have him. It's very possible that he is available in your leagues, and you can get him for that pivotal Week 15 matchup with the Texans. Another league winner right there in T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I drafted him in one of my leagues this year, and he was such a disappointment early on, but he's really come on late. A little too late for me, unfortunately, but maybe not too late for somebody else out there if he's available in 50% of the leagues. Who's number 2 on your list right now?
All right, so the final two, the top two, they're both going to be running backs because of how important the running back position is and how thin it is. All right, so these are major pickups that could really help you. Number 2, Ty Johnson of the New York Jets. Now, he stepped up big time last week after Frank Gore was sidelined with a concussion. He had 22 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. And he also caught 2 passes out of the backfield, which you like to see. And we'll see if Frank Gore is ready to play come Sunday. But either way, I like Ty Johnson to lead this Jets backfield against the Seahawks, in which should be a friendly matchup as Seattle's ranked like bottom 10 against running backs. And get this, John, he's rostered in just 1% of leagues. So Ty Johnson he's 99% available in 99% of leagues. And Frank Gore's old.
You'll be able to get this guy.
You're going to be able to get this guy. You love to see the usage with him. He's fresh. Like I said, 22 touches last week. And Frank Gore's old. I mean, yes, he's been ageless, but how many concussions has Frank Gore had in his career? I'm not even sure. Probably most of them hadn't been reported, since that's kind of a new thing where the concussion protocol has become, so important for the NFL to sort of identify and be cautious with. So I don't really trust that Frank Gore is going to come back at all. And if he does, they'll probably be cautious with him. Ty Johnson is the man in New York.
Well, what's weird? I saw an interview a few weeks ago with Frank Gore, and they asked him, they said, how many concussions do you think you've had in your career? And he said, huh? So, okay. For those of you that are still, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah,
for those of you that are watching at home, it's the What's on Sports podcast. I've got on the show right now Mr. Michael Schussler, one of the premier fantasy experts in the world today. He's telling us 5 waiver wire ads for the fantasy playoffs. This is if you're in a league, these 5 picks could win your championship. And I'm doing a little build-up right here because here comes number 1. The number 1 player that could be available that you could pick up on a fantasy waiver wire is
Cam Akers, rookie running back out of.
You're a Cam Akers fan, though.
I love Cam Akers, but I've been saying this, and I said this last week. I said last week that he was going to lead this backfield going forward. He was going to be the guy. And what happened, John? He led the team with 22 touches, 94 total yards, and another touchdown last week. So he's had scores in back-to-back weeks. And he's rostered in just
last week.
I called it. I mean, but like I said, that's what Sean McVay wants to do. They were just waiting. I don't know why they were waiting to give him the keys, but he had a great game 2 weeks ago, and then they finally gave him 20-plus touches, used him as a workhorse back, which Los Angeles really – that's what Sean McVay does want to do when they have the talent. Remember, that's what they did with Todd Gurley, which made him so sexy for fantasy a couple years ago. Now, Cam Akers still – he's rostered in just 41% of leagues. So if you guys didn't listen to me last week when I said to go get him, you don't want to make the same mistake twice. Go pick him up. All right, he's gonna be available. Just plug him into your lineups. He's a running back 2 going forward at the least with that volume. It's a potent Rams offense. You know they're going to get into the red zone and have scoring opportunities. Plus, he gets the Jets in week 15 and the Seahawks in week 16, and that's the fantasy semifinals and championship. So huge pickup for Cam Akers. I said this last week. I'm saying it again, especially if it's a keeper league. Cam Akers will probably be a third round pick in most fantasy drafts next year because he will lead this Rams backfield for a number of years going forward.
Wow,
that's my top 5.
Great information. I got to be honest. If I was still in any of my leagues, I would take all this information to heart. So this doesn't apply to me, unfortunately. It's my first year ever playing fantasy where I'm not in the playoffs. I had a bad year. I wish I would have listened to you earlier in the season. My bad, totally.
Hey.
But for those of you that are still out there, this is some great information that's available here on the podcast, but also Michael writes a really great report or 2 every week on whatsonsports.com. You guys can go over and check it out. We do have a question. So Melvin Gordon or pick Cam Akers?
Well, that's a good. Okay, so the way you got to pick up Cam Akers. All right, at least pick him up. You got to have. I wouldn't drop Melvin Gordon. Absolutely not. But still pick up Cam Akers and at least have him on your bench. Melvin Gordon has been decent, but I like Cam Akers going forward. We just saw him get another 20 touches. I think Sean McVay is going to stick with the hot hand, and I would start Cam Akers over Melvin Gordon. Don't drop Melvin Gordon, whoever asked that, but pick up Cam Akers and start him in front of Melvin Gordon this week.
And
probably for the rest of the year.
I love it. We're getting some interaction out of the crowd right now. People are asking questions.
Yep.
No one's made fun of my mom yet. I mean, this is great. The Chiefs
wonderful.
fans must not have showed up yet. So this is good. His name is Michael Schussler. Michael, I love having you on the show. You bring a lot.